At the back of the north wind, there lives a people who are tall, strong, warlike, and move like the wind across the grass steppes. These people are beholden to no one. They worship freedom, and they worship honor, and they worship loyalty. Greatest among them was King Antiochus, and he, one fine spring day, saw a maiden riding amongst the spears. He looked at her, she looked at him, and in the way of young men and maidens, in the next spring, they brought forth a beautiful little girl, and they named her Lexandra, a good, strong name. And Lexandra grew, and she was quick, and she was cunning, and she was little. And as she grew, she got into mischief. But each night, she would come back to her home fires and do puppets on the walls, playing with the firelight. Well, in her 15th year, she, like all of her people, were sent off to choose their war companions, great horses with tails like battle flags. These horses were boon companions, both of the hearth and in the heat of battle. She saw a filly with 1,000 devils in her eye. The filly looked at Lexandra. Lexandra looked at the filly. And from then on, they were inseparable. People would say, "Where's Lexandra?" And her mother would go, "If she and the filly don't kill each other, they will be home for supper." And so it went. Until the autumn, when hate came to the great grasslands. Hate in the form of Persian warriors who didn't wish for riches. They didn't wish for gold. They only wished to bring this great people to their knees. And when it was time to muster the troops, Antiochus and his wife really took a look at Lexandra and realized she stood no higher than her father's belt buckle, and the filly no higher than the shoulder of her mother's mare. And so they said, "Lexandra, you cannot go to battle, for you would be a weak link in the shield wall." And Lexandra looked at them and said, "Father, mother, I will obey you. I will stay in the back of the Vaughn, and I will care for the wounded." And her parents looked at each other and hoped that she was speaking the truth. So, up to the steps they rode, and they could hear the howling of these hungry wolves as they moved across the steps, burning everything in their wake. And Antiochus and his wife rode to battle. And they drove back that great black wave of hate and rode back up to the steps. And then they heard laughter coming and arrows flying, arrows of flame. And they did not know what to do. And they looked back for Lexandra, and there she was, pulling the wounded back, and she was pulling horses back, and she was saving people. And she cried out, "Wait, everyone, please, come in to where the fire has been, for it will not come here again." And so they did, and so they were saved. And then, at the very last moment, they knew there were too few of them and too many of the Persians. and so they mustered once more. And just as the light was shifting to gray of a dawn, Antiochus raised his arm for the final charge and reached over and kissed his wife gently on the cheek. But all of a sudden, everything was chaos, and there was confusion down amongst the Persians. And Antiochus and his people looked up, and there was a giant 100 feet high and 100 feet wide rider with its bow drawn and its steed prancing. And it raised its arm and it drew its arrow and it pointed it towards the Persians, who fled in fear. Well, the last Persian, in despair, threw a spear at Antiochus and his people, and suddenly the specter collapsed. And they looked, and it was Lexandra and her pony, crumpled in a heap, for she had used the trick of the light and the smoke and the fire just as she had to entertain children, and she had saved her people. And just as all was quiet on the grasslands, the sun broke through the horizon, and they heard a mighty war cry. And they saw Lexandra jump the sun to take her place in the stars, where she guards people who worship honor and loyalty to this day. Thank you.